Hey, it's another week. How are you doing?
I am very well, thanks. How about yourself, Earl?
Okay, not too bad. The whole situation seems to be, there seems to be more clarity in the world now. Whether positive or negative, I'm just grateful for the clarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so picking up on the last conversation we had around trust, one of the points that comes through in the Gallup report is also about how you encourage teamwork. And I think related to the conversation of trust, I was actually interested to share and hear your point of view about the human elements of building that trust. And the word I like to use is meaningful connections, because I think that's actually a very heavy word that we take lightly when we talk about building meaningful connections, not just connections where it's hee hee ha ha, right? But something that is to some extent based on vulnerable trust. And one of the things I believe it's important for a team to consider is what are some of the activities that they can actually encourage, so start and encourage to start building meaningful connections, especially recognizing that in today's complexity of how organizations are structured, it's important to be able to build meaningful connections in a shorter period of time versus when you're working in a functional environment and you've got years to build that trust. Maybe I might exaggerate there. One of the activities that I find rather powerful as a starting point is shared stories. And depending on where the team is on their journey and how familiar they might be, there's several ways in which teams could explore starting to see the person behind the colleague, the real person, or at least a semblance of the real person. And one of the ways I think is rather powerful is actually when it starts with normally the leader and then leads on to the team members, start to share about perhaps a challenging time in their life and how through that challenge, it in the end turned out to be something that positively impacted them in perhaps the way they're being, perhaps in the way they approach life or approach work. So a type of challenge that turned into a positive. And I find it powerful because behind that story, there are normally two things that come up from what I've observed. The first is that people start to see the person behind the activity and they stop dissociating the fact that there is a person there and they're just calling out maybe what they like or they don't like or they didn't resonate in terms of how someone might do something. And the second is actually they get sort of a preview into the motivation behind that person and why that person might be doing things a certain way. So it builds a new inroad into how you might then relate to what otherwise might have irked you, or maybe you're not so comfortable with on how a co-worker might be doing certain things. So the area of building meaningful connections is something I think teams need to pay attention to as part of building trust. What about you? What are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with that, Earl. The thing is, with human beings, we tend to view the world through our own specific lens. And we often judge others on their actions, but we judge ourselves on our intentions, which isn't really fair because we can't see someone else's intentions. And we can only understand their behavior from our kind of mental framework. So I find that sharing stories is great because it allows an individual to kind of step in those shoes for a moment and imagine, okay, what would it felt like to experience that adversity. Something that I love to use with my clients, especially, and just depending on the maturity of where a team might be with their trust levels, because sometimes if there isn't much trust, you won't get much from the sharing straight away. So sometimes, depending on where they are, I might do what I absolutely love is the DISC behavioral assessment. And it's based on, I like it better than most assessments because it doesn't box anyone in, and it's really about what your tendencies are, and it's just based on your behavior. And so it helps people start understanding similarities and differences. And so immediately we can understand how our communication might need to be altered, because a lot of time we expect someone to be changing the way they communicate with us, instead of us trying to alter how, because the burden is on you. If you want to deliver a message, you need to deliver it in a way that is going to be understood by that individual, and that individual might take in information or process information a completely different way. And this is why you'll have people on different ends, and DISC is all about whether we're fast-paced, slow-paced, people-focused, task-focused. And when a task-focused person is speaking to a people-focused person, their focus is completely different. So immediately the translation of what's been said can get mixed. So I think that it is an excellent way for people to, and I've seen such great shifts, and that's something you can do in a workshop. That's something that you can spend half a day on, because it's an activity, but it forms a part of a bigger process of building that trust, creating that meaningful connection, and then leading into creating more effective communication.
Yeah, and I think the last point that you made, that it is an activity on its own, but the important part of that process is also how it then infiltrates or becomes part of your day-to-day psyche as well. So building trust is also actually a conscious effort. It's a conscious effort of actually building vulnerable trust. It's not something that will build itself. And I think the point that you made about how does it then become part of the cadence, and not just a workshop that was done in half a day, is also important. And to recognize that it does take effort and it does take time to build trust, but some of the activities that we're sharing would assist that process and to some extent accelerate it. But it is a process and it is a journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Adele, as usual. Nice to have these little chats with you across the world. You have a great day ahead.
Thank you. You too, Earl. Bye.